Hi everybody, so I'm Jane, I work in pharmacy. I recognise about half the number of faces I think here, which is nice. And I wanted to talk to you tonight about singing, which is something that I do outside of work and very occasionally in work.
Lovely. Okay. So we were having a bit of a chat about your singing, and I know you're involved with all sorts of different things. I mean, is that something you've always done at school? And when you're growing up, have you always been involved with singing?
Yeah, so I come from the north. I've moved to Devon 30 years ago, and have always sung. Came from a farming family where lots of my elderly relatives sang in chapel. So that was something which was always around. My granddad lived with us and used to sing all the time. And the only social life there was going to chapel and singing. So that was a way in. And then at school, I sang in school choirs. At university, was in a choral society. So that kind of came from a religious and choral, more classical choral background. That was my introduction to singing, I guess.
Yeah. And then, at what stage did you move to Devon?
So I moved to Devon after university, which was 30 years ago now, and then kind of had a break I joined a classical choral choir, a classical music choir in Newton Abbot when we first moved here. Really enjoyed that, but actually it was difficult, eventually became difficult to balance the home and work requirements and being there for enough rehearsals, and also it began to feel like work a little bit. I think that if you couldn't be there for the rehearsals, then that was no good. So I dropped it for a while, had a young family. And then when my son was about 9 or 10, he joined in with a community play run by an organisation called Wren Music in Newton Abbot. And they run community choirs and at the time were also doing orchestras and community plays. And it seemed like a way back in to singing, and appealed because it was much more inclusive, no auditions, didn't matter whether you turned up or not, just went along for the joy of singing, really. And so got back into that so I guess that's nearly 20 years ago now, 15, 20 years ago, and have been singing with them ever since.
Okay. I mean, it's probably worth just asking a little bit more about Wren and their ethos, because I know that you're quite involved with them. I mean, I've come across the folk orchestra of Torbay, which I've sort of gone along and played fiddle with and really enjoyed, and certainly that's been really helpful for me, because as you say, the ethos has been very much you can turn up, and if you play a wrong note, that's fine, you just stop playing for that bit and join in again when you can, and nobody's going to sort of look daggers at you because you've sort of played the wrong bit. Is that similar to how the choirs are set up?
Yeah, absolutely. So Wren are a music charity who work across the board in all ages, schools, old people's homes, community choirs, and it's all about inclusivity, really. And what I think has really appealed to me has been something about the quality of sound that you can make, even though maybe half the group don't read music, half the group only turn up some of the time, but you can be when you put a group of people together, what you can achieve is incredible, and it's really good fun. And I think having moved to Devon, I got more interested in the traditional and folk music scene, because that's what there is down here. Can't say it was something, until we moved here, it wasn't necessarily something I was interested in, but if you're into live music, that's what's available in Devon. And both the history and the ability for anybody to join in at any level has really appealed to me, and I've really enjoyed it. Wren has been involved with a number of European projects over the years. That was one of my introductions. Was lucky enough to have a trip to Italy as part of the Wren folk choir. And I was so kind of blown away by what you could achieve in a small community choir that I ended up being part of the board of Wren. And so I'm kind of supporting their work. So I'd encourage anybody who even thinks they've got a slight musical bone in their body, have a look and have a go. Kerry and I both sing in the Torbay choir. But yeah, it's really good fun.
So one of the things I was really interested in, I mean, you mentioned about going abroad there, but there was a later trip, I think, is it to Sardinia? Can you tell us a
That's
little bit about
right.
that?
Yeah, that's right. So 2 years ago, Ren run a folk weekend every year. And we invite a mixture of professional musicians, and anybody else can come along and join in too. And about 5 years ago, we had a group of Sardinian tenors come to the festival called Sos Cantores from a tiny village in the mountains in Sardinia. And as part of one of my other interests outside of work is cooking and food. And I do the catering and run the bar for the folk festival, and got to know the Sardinians. They arrived, they're incredible. There were a group of 10 of them, and they arrived with enough food from Sardinia to actually run the festival themselves. So
Oh.
we instantly had a shared passion. They're like a rugby team. They're great, 10 tenors. And they invited us back to Sardinia to go and sing with them in their 13th century incredible tiny church, to take some Devon music back to them. I think we've got a clip.
Put some pictures up, Jane, because
Yeah,
you sent me some pictures.
That would be great.
Is that coming through?
So this is the church. This is the church in Galtali, in a tiny place up in the mountains in Sardinia. It's incredible. The acoustics are absolutely amazing. It was incredible. 9 of us went on this trip from the UK, 6 of whom are professional musicians, and 3 of us rank amateurs who just went along for the ride, so we thought, and then ended up performing in this church, and it was just fantastic. We got there to rehearse on the first night, and the 9 of us sang and were instantly transported by the acoustics of the place, and thought, oh, this is going to be great, it's going to be okay. And we sat down to listen to the Sardinians rehearsing, and they struck up their tenor singing, and it was so incredible. We were all instantly terrified of not being able to do anything so good, I think. But they're just great. It's a really, really interesting way of singing. They sing, I think we've got a clip, they sing in a circle, all facing inwards. So there's no showmanship about it. It's performance, but it's to each other. And it's really interesting male bonding. I think they stand really close to each other, so they're all touching in a circle. They sing in harmony, and they sing 4 parts and say that the 5th part is the voice that comes out of the middle of what they're singing. It rises up to the heavens. It's incredible. I don't know if you've got a little clip, David.
Yes, can I put some videos on? It's just working out the right ones.
Yeah.
I mean, Jane sent some fantastic videos across, and I think some of them we'll need to watch just a little bit, just with the time available, but there's at least a couple that I think it'd be lovely to watch all the way through. Do you want to start with this sort of informal one of that group singing?
Oh yeah, that would be great. So as I said, they're a great bunch, really good fun. And the Airbnb we were staying at, we had a barbecue on the night after the concert. And the story aside is that Sardinians arrived with a whole lamb to barbecue and promptly set the barbecue on fire. So after we'd literally put out the fire, they decided they were going to sing for us, and they invited 2 of the English non-musicians to stand in the circle and join in with them, and this is the result. It's quite incredible.
I'll play a little bit of this, and then we'll put some on of your group singing as well.
Okay.
And it'd be nice to watch just a little bit and listen to this group with their sort of professional videos as well. So we'll just have some clips of those 3 things, if that's all right, if we can work through them.
Perfect.
So shall I put the clip of your group singing next? Would that work?
Yeah, lovely. So we sang a number of different some West Country songs, and I think I sent you a clip of Celtic Blessing, which we sang for them. That Sardinian song they were just singing is a protest song about Sardinian freedom, and they need no excuse whatsoever to bring that one out. But it is amazing. When you're there, you can feel it in your chest. It's incredible.
Is that coming through? It's perhaps not. Let me try that again.
Okay.
that looks better. Is that okay there?
That's the one, yeah.
So you talked about the physical sensation when others were singing. I've heard people talk about that as an aspect of group singing anyway, that sort of physical interaction between the voices and the feel in your chest. Is that something that you feel? Is that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why I wondered about sharing and being able to talk to the group about this, because I do love to sing, but it's not an individual experience for me. I sent a little video of singing on my own, but that's not what really does it for me. It's the shared experience I'm producing. It's the synergy of producing something beautiful from a group of people together that's more than the sum of its parts. I think, I guess that clip you just looked at, one of those singers is my husband, who came with us not really expecting to be involved, had never sung in public before. And it's not bad as a first gig, is it, to be in the 13th century Sardinian church,
Amazing.
singing with a group of professionals. But I think there's the connection between the group made it extra special, I think. And that's always where I get the pleasure, I think.
And I'm really interested. I'm going to put a clip of the SOS Cantores group again on a sort of YouTube clip of them. And I'm really interested in this idea that they're facing in together, which really sort of physically makes the point that it's not all about the audience and performance. It's about them coming together and sharing the experience. That's I guess what I take out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you add to that the layers of the what they sing is very traditional. It's a very traditional style, carries all the history of that place with it. There are layers and layers of shared experience there, really. I think it's
lovely. Let me put a little bit of a clip of that on as well. There we go. So I'm going to pause that again. We will send out links to their YouTube channel, because there's quite a few videos that they've got, which people might want to look at later.
I think that the last thing I guess to say about them that I thought was really striking, there are in the whole group there are about 15 of them, 2 of whom are 15. You know, that's not necessarily, that wouldn't necessarily be the coolest thing to do as a Sardinian teenager, but actually they have the best time. It's great.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So, I mean, sticking with this theme of sort of about engaging with other people and taking part, and not necessarily about the audience, I think you talked a little bit about your involvement with, is it the Bearing Gold
Mhm.
Folk Festival as well. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So Wren have Wren hold an archive of folk music, which was collected by Sabine Baring Gould, who was a Victorian, I think, vicar who collected folk music. And they ran, so, and this is where I get into the bit of folk music where I can see people's eyes start glazing over, where you say, this is going to be about murder ballads and collect 15 different versions that were collected by the same vicar. So we have a weekend called the Baring Gould Weekend, but the only reason it's called Baring Gould is because some of the songs are from that archive. And we, as I've said, are part of the catering team. Because it used to be run by one of the pubs, and all the money went to the pub, and actually we got a lot of all these folkies. We don't want to be listening to that, so we decided we could do it better ourselves.
Yeah,
and I think what I sent a video clip, because what I really wanted to talk a little bit about was, again, the inclusivity. So from that weekend, at the end of the weekend, everybody's relaxed a bit, we've done all the cooking, and somebody said, why don't we have a sing? And there's a little video clip, I think, David, of us. This is after a whole weekend of cooking and cleaning up for everybody, people just spontaneously having a sing, and it's great. This is what I really really like about it.
Carol like a love in the light that is coming in the morning. Eve is the lady, Adam is the Lord. When we are ruled by the love of one another, Eve is the lady, Adam is the Lord. In the light that is coming in the morning, sing.
I think the little break in the middle is an important part of it, isn't it? Really, that it doesn't
That's
matter.
where nobody knew the words temporarily, I think, and I think that that's important, isn't it? It's okay for everybody just to have a good time, I think.
Absolutely. So one of the things with the folk orchestra they run is that they try to encourage people to engage with learning by ear,
Mm-hmm.
which for a lot of musicians is not something that people are particularly used to. But is obviously the sort of traditional way of passing on music. Is that something to do with the choir side of things? Do they?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, people, teach by ear first. And actually, initially, I find that quite difficult because I'd come up through a kind of choral tradition. I'd play the piano, would look at the sheet music, and it's quite a challenge to try and learn without the music. People are desperate to get it in their hands, but it does get into a part of your brain which you don't get from just looking at the music, definitely. And that's how you get to the 15 different versions of the same song, isn't it? Because people have remembered different ones. But it's fun, and it completely means that anybody can walk in the door and within 15 minutes be able to sing something, probably in a number of parts. Maybe all at the same time sometimes. But
I mean, certainly my experience of that is that it gets into a different bit of your brain, and you learn it that way, and you've learnt it in a different way, and your relationship with that bit of music is always different from if you'd started off with the dots on the page. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I would have to admit that I still feel like I need the dots on the page to bring it back into my head again, but I think it's taken a long time. It would take a long time to change that, but it's completely possible. And people who I've really learned a lot from people who maybe don't read music and have a much more sort of instinctive reaction to the tune, often know it much better than I do, know the songs much better than I do, very quickly, I think.
And I guess one of the things with folk songs in particular is that both the timing and the notes are not necessarily on the beat or exactly on the note, if you like. It can be varying much more than with sort of classical choral singing, for example.
Yeah, and one of the we have sung a number of African songs with the folk choir, and actually obviously it's not they wouldn't normally be traditionally scored. and it's quite difficult to put that onto a page, and much better to learn it and feel it. As those harmonies they're so human, they're just right in you. You don't need to look at that being written down. Something appears, a bit like the tenors, where a fifth voice appears out of the middle. If you start those South African songs, then often they just appear from nowhere. People just know them somehow. It's amazing. It's great.
And you've done singing in Africa yourself, I think, haven't you? Is that right?
Yes. So Kerry and I met through Kerry got involved with a charity which is now called Future Health Africa, and Kerry and I teach on a quality improvement course, so nothing to do with music whatsoever. And I have been lucky enough to be part of this course, and with some very much better qualified teachers than me, to teach leadership. And I think that Kerry's nodding. She always says that. Kerry is shaking her head. I ended up, I think, being potentially entertainments officer is what I've called myself. Lots of the icebreakers we did on the course were about singing, and it's just incredible what you can get people to do within 5 or 10 minutes if they're willing to share a bit of themselves. And so we used some of the Wren approach to just say, right, let's all have a sing. We've got 10 minutes to produce something beautiful, and it brings a whole different level of connection, I think. Yeah, it's great. It's been an absolute joy to do that.
Wonderful. Nick, would you be able to bring in some comments from the chat? I haven't had a chance to be looking at those, but I can see that 1 or 2 people have been bringing in things. I don't know how many of those are questions or comments.
Mostly comments, but let's go through them. So Todd mentions how folk music contains so much history. I think it's a great way to connect with the emotional life and psyche of the past and join it to the present, which is probably very true, isn't it, Jane? It's
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not folk music is not all about bearing gold from the 1800s. I think folk music is protest songs now. You know, there are people who are writing music now, which will be folk music, is folk music. Yeah.
Kat mentions about an example where she heard someone sing in a church, and because of the acoustics, it just really enhanced this solo singing, but the acoustics of the environment really just enhanced that. And I suppose that's an important consideration as well, isn't it? The location from which you sing to enhance sort of voices.
Yeah, totally. And I think singing in church that's what they were built for, those buildings. And I don't particularly have a faith, but there's something about singing in those spaces and the history that is linked with it, and the fact that they were built to have great acoustics. It's incredible. Yeah, it brings an extra layer of something. Yeah.
I think there's just
I'm going to put up the video that you sent of you singing on your own. I know the talk has mainly been about singing with other people, and you're saying that's what you really enjoy doing. But I think the video that you sent across, I think, is fantastic, and I think it'd be really nice to show all of that, if that's okay. Do you want to introduce that?
Okay, so not something which I'm always particularly comfortable with or have sort of leaned towards solo singing. I've done it a few times and always found it a bit painful. So I decided that I'd kind of step off the cliff and send David a video of me singing. It's a folk song called "The Water Is Wide." With something about the tune is very touching, and there are hundreds of versions, many of which are quite sad. I'm never really drawn to the 15 versions of folk songs where everybody's dead by the end, so slightly more positive version, I hope. And yeah, I thought if I should put my money where my mouth is and sing for you. So yeah, I've done this. Thank you.
Lovely. I'll put that on now.
The water is wide, I cannot get o'er, and neither have I wings to fly. Bring me a boat that will carry two, and both shall row, my love and I. Bring me a boat that will carry two, and both shall row, my love and I. Oh, love is handsome and love is fine, and love's a jewel when first it's new. But love grows old and then grows cold and fades away like morning dew. There is a ship and she sails the sea. She's loaded deep as deep can be, but not so deep as the love I'm in. I cannot if I sink or swim, but not so deep as the love I'm in. I cannot if I sink or swim. The water is wide, I cannot get o'er, and neither have I wings to fly. Bring me a boat that will carry two, and both shall row, my love and I. Bring me a boat that will carry two, and both shall row, my love and I.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's really good. Unfortunately, the time has run away with us. There's lots more that we could talk about. I know there were other videos and things you sent across, but you know, I think it's been fascinating to hear about your journey with singing and with music, and to hear about the way it's a way of engaging with people from your point of view.
Great, thank you for the opportunity. It's a lovely forum to do this in. Thank you.